The theme, manifesting Sri Krishna, is very special because, in a sense, it is a dwelling in meditation on the Lord, on the Supreme Personality of the Divine. Only a few months ago, in this very platform of Kalarigram, we had a similar discussion on the theme of meditation on the Divine Mother. And we saw how the divine creative energy manifests herself as the whole universe, embraces, supports, nourishes at each moment each tiniest particle and all beings as the Divine Mother. But how does she pour out? What does she pour out? When she leans back to conceive of this vision of the universe that she wants to create, when this energy of creation comes back to rest at its origin, then we call it, him, the Divine Lord. The two are really one being, taking two poises. She coming back to rest is he as the Divine Lord. He pouring out his energy is she as the Divine Mother. In the Indian tradition, these two aspects are often put together. Ishvara, Shakti, or Krishna, Mahakali, Brahman, Maya, Purusha, Prakriti. Each of these represents various aspects or relationships of their play. But we will dwell upon him in her play in three different moods. You see, at first, as he visions the universe that he becomes and chooses to manifest, from that vision, the power that pours, she pours out, whirling, forming. But as she pours, he does not remain behind, separate from her, because it is his vision that she manifests, and therefore he is intimately present in her entire movement of pouring. They are always together, but only in the movement of pouring, the aspect of the energy is dominant. Second, we see her whirling to create forms. But the whirl gives form to the vision that he held, and the vision is he as the seed in the form. And so in a different relationship, he is at the very core of all the forms that she creates. And the third relationship is all that she manifests, all the forms, from the atom to the human, to the stars, to the galaxies, the universe itself, she embraces entirely with her love, nourishes and sustains with her love, and the source of that love is him. The goal of that love is drawing all back to himself. So these are three relationships of their play, and we will dwell upon each of these and elaborate to more deeply understand but also experience this play. First, as she pours out to manifest his vision, it is this humongous energy. The energy that is so enormous that in a single whim of a burst, she can extinguish the entire universe or give birth to 1,000,000 universes. This is the humongous energy of his creative power that pours out. He is supporting at each moment, in every movement, in every detail, and it is this which is imaged in our tradition as Shiva offering his chest to his power, to his Shakti, as she dances on his chest. Or, in a different symbolism, Shiva himself moves to become the dance as Nataraja, the Lord of Rhythms, rhythming out the whole universe. And the entire universe is formed of the whirlings of his rhythms. Rhythms within rhythms within rhythms, unendingly, from the infinite all the way to the infinitesimal. This immanence of his presence, supporting at each moment, we name traditionally as Narayana. This is the presence of the divine that lives in all things in the whole universe, in all space, across all time, in all forms, even in the unformed, and of course in all beings. The symbol given traditionally in the Puranic symbolism is Vishnu or Narayana lying down on his serpent who is coiled, Ananta. The suggestion is interesting. Unending is the name of the serpent. And he is in a poise of sleep, of trance, in which he conceives, and then he opens his eyes and manifests all that he conceives. He is the preserver sustaining across space and space and time are represented by the waters, the ocean on which he floats, supported by Ananta. Ananta itself is the energy of the cosmic manifestation in space and time, by which he fills these waters. As a preserver, he maintains and holds the seed across the cycles of cosmic creations. And the seed is from his navel, we see Brahma, the creator, as the principle emerging. And the navel, as you know, is the creative energy, the pranic aspect. And all these are symbolic representations of this relationship. This gives us a first glimpse of how he is present in all things, in all forms, in all space, in all time, equally. Because he is equal, her dance, her pouring out can be without limit in extreme. Think of it this way. If you are painting with a paintbrush on a canvas, and the canvas has a bias, it does not capture certain colors run or don't stick, or the canvas has holes or tears, or the canvas is weak, if you push too hard it breaks. You cannot manifest all your possibilities. But it is only when the canvas is infinite, eternal, entirely unmoving, utterly equal, that you can have an infinite play of energy, of an infinite intensity, of an infinity of variations of colors and forms and all their interactions, infinitely varied. And therefore, that is his poise. Within us, his presence supports us in that poise, even as his presence supports the entire universe in that poise. So this is the first relationship of the two, where she pours out, but he is present at each moment, supporting the dynamic play of her energies, or rather of his energy that she is. The second aspect is as she moves to build forms. This energy now begins to whirl. You notice the way the universe is formed. We have an appearance of stability, but actually everything is changing. Nothing remains the same. And if we are deluded by the stability, it is only because of the short length of our perception. Even a mountain changes, even the rock changes. And if we go deeper into the rock, you will find the rock itself is in a seething frenzy of energetic fluctuations, which in the quantum world is described as infinity of variations of particles appearing and disappearing, sustaining the whirling of the atoms. But when she forms thus through the whirl, and all is in the universe whirl, the center of the whirl is his vision and his presence visioning out, guiding the whirl, supporting the whirl, and directing its development. If he was not, the worlds would collapse. Because he is as sustainer, the whirl remains. Think of it. Any world that you create in the material plane with air or water eventually subsides and fizzles out. Why? Because the creative energy behind has stopped. But when the creative energy or the source of the creative energy is at the very core, the world can continue. And yes, it will change, but as he conceives it, in the way he chooses. Sri Aurobindo describes this in a few lines that I will read from his poem Savitri. He says, "He sleeps in the atom and the burning star. He sleeps in man and god and beast and stone. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the world forgets to die. He is the center of the circle of God. He is the circumference of nature's run." And straight away we see this pattern of his presence at the center in the entire scale of manifestation, starting with the atom. Look at the atom, or perhaps even a subatomic particle, and you will see always the same movement of the world, always the encapsulation in a spherical rhythming. The atom itself, being a combination of particles, is a whirl again with a core. And the core, in some sense, if you really dwell on it, is not even the nucleus, but inside the nucleus, somewhere an empty space perhaps, around which the world takes place. The empty point or the center never moves. Because it does not move, because it is utterly stable, the world can be infinitely rich and complex. And you see this pattern in the atom. And as the atoms aggregate, they build forms, planetary forms, for example, in space or asteroids, and they are spinning. Again, at the center of the Earth or the planet is his presence, not just the physical center, but symbolically, which magnetizes, creates the magnetic field, creates the heat, which not only nourishes the Earth, but nourishes all life which lives on the planet. And then we see all the planets whirling around their center, which is inside the sun. But actually, it's not even physically in the sun. Sometimes it is on the edge, because the sun and the planets really revolve around a common center from pure physical point of view. And what holds that center is his presence, visioning out the unfoldment of the entire solar system. In the same way, at the center of the galaxies and the whirl of the galaxies, you see they are all whirlpools, is his presence. Humongous energy released from there, and we do not even know by what means such energies are released, whether in the galaxy or in the suns. We speculate. But the energy is so enormous that sometimes in a single flash from that source within, there is enough energy released to create multiple galaxies in a fragment of a moment. We see these flashes and we are astonished. We do not understand from where it can come, because that is his presence imaging out, releasing his energy freely as he wills. And then there are super galaxies, and perhaps the entire universe is whirling around him, who is present everywhere, isn't it? So in a very poetic sense, there is a phrasing, I do not know the source, where we say, "It is he who sleeps in stone, wakes up in plants, feels in animals, thinks in the human being, but he is not yet fully awake at that point. And as he fully emerges, you have the full manifestation of his presence, knowledge, power, love, and the entire visioning of what he chooses to be. And this awakening beyond the mind's thinking is what we will call his manifestation as the divine humanity, the next step in our evolution. This, again, in our traditions, in the Puranas, is represented by the 3 steps of Vishnu. In the first step, he forms the physical life. In the second step, he forms the mental life, the peak of which is our present humanity. And from here, the third step is the divine life, where he comes fully into his own inner revealed divinity, What was so far hidden at the very core of things, guiding secretly, now is fully revealed, and the form is his form. No more concealing, fully manifesting. The bodily life, the mental life, and the spiritual perfection, which includes the previous two. He does not withdraw into something, he continues to manifest, now fully revealed as the manifester, as the co-creator of the whole universe, cosmos. When we look at the physical whirling, there's a physical circling. But as these stages of growth, of emergence take place, the whirling takes on more and more subtle forms. If we were able to see with subtler sight, we would see around the physical body of any creature, including the human, the whirling energy of prana. Literally from the universe, pranic energy flows into us, whirls and flows out. What holds the whirl? His will, his vision, his presence. In the same way, there is a mental energy that pours into us and forms a whirl of a mental unit or a mental individuality. But all of these are finally held by his presence, and the presence held is itself a special focus of his spiritual concentration, which is at the core of everything. And so, seated within all things, forming them and sustaining them and visioning them, we call him by the name Vasudeva. The first name we spoke of, Narayana, the second name, Vasudeva. Literally, the light that inhabits, if you go to the etymology of the words, immanent in the heart of all creatures. Sri Aurobindo quotes from the Mandukya Upanishad in this description, and I read from his translation, the unified, in whom conscious thought is concentrated, who is all delight, an enjoyer of delight, the wise. He is the Lord of all, the omniscient, the inner guide. This is Mandukya Upanishad. And here we see what is his role as he is seated within us. And of course in all things and in all beings. But in the human being, most creative in power of expression. And yet we are not he. We only feel his impulse within us, not knowing where it comes from. He seated secretly within us is delight. He is delight, the very substance of delight as our soul. He is also enjoyer of delight. And whatever our experiences of life, however painful, however struggling, however conflicting, because his delight is within us, in spite of all contrary appearances, we have hope and we persist. And eventually, by his strength that he fills us with, we overcome. He within visions out our journey, our destiny, which we are led to fulfill. He seated within is guiding and even directing the reins of the horses, so to say. The image is in the Indian tradition, generally in the yoga tradition, of the chariot in which the horses, which are led by the horses. And the symbolism is beautiful. The chariot itself is the physical body. The horses are the life energies. And then there are two, the charioteer who holds the reins of the horses and the one who is seated in the chariot who journeys. And here we can play with two different kinds of symbol. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna himself becomes the charioteer. Because Arjuna, as the mind, the intellect, the individual, who is not yet divinized, is battling the battle of life. Secretly, it is Sri Krishna as the charioteer who nudges the horses and pulls and pushes the life energies and guides the chariot in the battle. Arjuna merely is busy in the immersion of the struggle. But who leads you out through the struggle to victory, to success, is this secret inhabitant and guide. And Sri Krishna takes that position in the Bhagavad Gita and the journey in the Mahabharata generally. But in a different symbolism, we might say the intellect is the power, and that is us human beings guiding the horses as we are trying to navigate our struggle of life, and the soul within, secretly seated, enjoys this journey. The chariot being the body, the horses the life force, the charioteer the mind, and he enjoys the journey. But at some point, he says, this is not interesting, I'd rather go there. And the intention, the visioning, nudges the mind, nudges the horses, nudges the chariot. And so in a sense, he is not merely a passive enjoyer, he actively chooses the lines of delight of the journey. And then occasionally, when there is a great crisis, he puts forward his will and his power, seizes the reins of the horses and pulls and directs them. And these are the crises of our life, where suddenly we say, something emerged within me, took charge of the situation, set right the problem, and then subsided, and I don't know what it was. And that was his presence. The beauty of this insight is that even when we are not conscious of him, he is conscious of us and nudges. But when he emerges fully, takes on the full charge, that is when we have a chance to realize the divine within us and perhaps to merge into his presence, because after all, we are nothing but a reflection of his consciousness. He becomes then, not only in his emergence, the full divine perfection, but he is also in the process of the emergence, the Lord of the Yoga, because he guides the journey of our awakening and our evolution. Nature is seeking, through various symbols, to formulate the truth that he visions out. She is his power, but he is the originator of the power and can override and manifest, change everything. In order to assist us in our evolutionary journey, especially in those great steps that we are unable to make on our own, he objectifies himself, because we do not know him. He is too secret, hidden across behind too many layers. He manifests himself in a human form with the full power of his creativity and the vision of the work to be done. This conscious manifestation of the Lord, of the divine, we call the avatar. Literally, coming down to earth. That's the etymology of the word avatar. And as the avatar, as the human being embodying all the problems of human nature and all the problems of humanity, he overcomes those problems and infuses a new direction and awakes a new level of consciousness. Work which could not have been done by us. But when he does it, he must do it in human form, so that the imprint of what he does is now available to all humanity in the groove that he has created, that we may flow into effortlessly in time, but consciously when we make the conscious effort of yoga. But if not for his manifestation as the avatar, we would be unable, nature herself would be unable to make that great leap. In the Puranic tradition, again, we find that the avatars are described as 10. And you will see in the sequence of the 10, very obviously, stages of evolution. From the fish to the tortoise, who's half between water and land, and then the wild boar, the half human, half animal creature, Narasimha. And from there, the first appearance of the dwarf man. The dwarf man is an attempt to first formulate the physical man, from there the vital man driven by his passions, and then comes Sri Rama as the sattvic mind, defining, setting the standard of the future humanity. Today, all the values of humanity that you may look at and say, this is true humanness, and those are animal passions or values or standards, you will find formulated, embodied, lived and established in humanity by Sri Rama. He made that transition for humanity so that the mass of humanity would now begin to awaken. Ah, yes, this is the ideal by which we want to live. Comes after that Sri Krishna, who brings down something beyond the mind, something of what Sri Aurobindo calls the overmental principle, which opens the mind to infinity and makes possible the manifestation of the divine delight. There is, of course, in the tradition, the aspect of the Buddha who chooses the withdrawal from all evolution as a possibility, but bypassing the evolutionary process. But finally, the 10th is seen to be, or named to be, Kalki. He comes riding on a horse, white horse, representing the power of the purity, his sword, which is the power of knowledge, and he destroys, cuts through all ignorance to establish on earth the divine consciousness and the divine, let's say, law, dharma on earth. Law is too weak a word. But there is no 11th avatar. There is no 12th. Why? And here we get a glimpse. When these stages of emergence have taken place, in the final emergence, the Lord Himself, the divine presence, emerges and takes charge of our mind, life, and body as a divinized mind, as a divinized life, and even perhaps a divinized body. At that point, there is no more need for the Lord to manifest in human form, because each one of us is His manifestation consciously. We are each, in a sense, aspects of the Lord, you may say vibhutis or avatars, but conscious of the divine presence, able to manifest that divinity without the distortion that comes with division, ignorance, clouding and darkness and limitation. And therefore the work is completed by the 10th avatar, and humanity itself now begins to participate directly in the divine manifestation, no more indirectly nudged and pushed by His secret presence and the impulses of nature. Thus, through His series of objectivized manifestations, He pushes forward the collective evolution, the yoga of humanity, to assist us, and we can consciously now participate in that movement by the individual yoga that each one of us can, by the support within that He provides, rise to that divinized potential of our humanity in a single lifetime, 1,000,000 times faster than the slow process of nature. But always it is He who emerges, and it is He who guides the emergence as the Lord of the yoga. These are profound truths. I'm only encapsulating them in brief. So we saw two relationships of the Lord and His energy. She pours and He supports. She forms and He inhabits at the center of the form, guiding the unfolding of the forms. And the third relationship we saw was she embraces, nourishes, and sustains with her love every form that she creates. And because of that love, we awake, we are drawn, we are pulled. But the source of her love is Himself, who is the love, isn't it? The love awakening in us that she pours, the love awakening in us turns to seek for the Lord. When we seek love in other forms, in other beings, in other objects even perhaps, we find always eventually the form deceives. Our expectations fail. And yet the pull was true, we feel. Because the original pull was the perception of something magical, beyond human potential, beyond human capacity, beyond human experience, something so beautiful and true. And that's why the love felt so true and beautiful. But when we attached it to the surface form, It could not hold, it could not sustain, it fizzled out. But had we directed it to the true source of the divine within the form, that would have been the true continued, sustained experience of love. This is something so profound, because at the very core of our evolution, our relationships, our experience of the universe itself is this truth. And we will dwell on this a little more. I've shared before, in other occasions, an experience that I heard from a friend who is a professor of computer science in Hong Kong University. And we were speaking of various things, his plans, and he began to speak of things in his plans which sounded unusual for a professor and for computer science. A kind of an idealism, a kind of a glimpse of something which was somehow more true than the form itself. Sensing that, I asked him, do you follow any particular tradition? He says, no. Any religion? He said, no. Any philosophy? He said, no. Finally, I had to say, where does this come from? He was embarrassed. He says when he was, I think, 18 or so, or 20, one day he woke up from sleep and suddenly he found the entire universe was alive and conscious and full of love. From deep within his heart was an outpouring of an intense love to all things and even to the whole universe. And he experienced each object pouring out a love towards him. And his love pouring out, the love pouring in from all objects, and he did not know what to make of it. He was overwhelmed, unable to function normally. So I heard this description and I said, wow, what a wonderful thing. Then what happened? And he said, my friends took me to a psychiatrist. He put me on medication and the experience went away. I laughed in embarrassment, in disappointment. I said, had you been in India, they would have worshipped you as a saint. But this experience came upon me spontaneously, because obviously there was a prior work done, of which this surface personality is still unaware of. But the emergence of the divine as the enjoyer, as the source of the love and the bliss and the delight, the emergence is also therefore an emergence of the source of the love, the bliss and the delight. And when it emerges within us, we see with new perceptions through all our senses, not just the sight, hearing, taste, touch and smell, in the direct contact of consciousness with consciousness. We experience the same love, delight and bliss in all things because we recognize Him in all things. This then becomes the basis of our relationship with everyone and the whole universe. And it is spontaneous when His emergence takes place within us. Or, to use a different vocabulary, when the divine soul within that we are truly comes forward, we begin to see the whole world as a manifestation of that love, bliss, delight. And all relationships are therefore only forms of the bliss, delight, love, and variations and colors of their play. And this is when we may say we become truly participants in the divine play of unfoldment of the play. It is towards this that the whole of our evolution is pushing us, this experience and this participation for which the whole universe was born. And I would like to dwell on this a little, because it is not only the love is an expression also of the knowledge and the strength, and the three together form the fullness of His expression. She, the divine energy, is power of knowledge, strength, love. That is His knowledge, strength, love. And so we find as if two layers. In the Indian tradition, we have the name Dharma which has a static aspect of the right, the truth that is right. And then that is the Satya. And then there is the dynamic aspect, the rhythming out, the rhythm, in which she manifests the same triple truth. And so Dharma, in form, in manifestation, has this triple aspect: knowledge, strength, love. If you do not have knowledge, then you have blind and weak love. If you do not have strength, you have knowledge, you have love, but it is easily extinguished, cannot manifest itself. If you do not have love, then knowledge and strength only makes you a despot. Dharma is the triune manifestation of these three truths that he embodies, that she manifests in us. This rhythming out, ritam, is what you see in the Chinese tradition, and it's called Tao. It's the dynamic aspect of the Dharma. It is not Dharma itself. This power of love that he pours out, because she is his power, we can experience as a pouring, a movement, but also a movement which is never stale, which is never monotone, which is ever rich, ever renewed. So, for example, with human experience of joy, you enjoy something, or pleasure, something is pleasant. After a while, you get bored. Okay, now what? What's next? Been there, done that, novelty gone, what's next? But the nature of the delight that she manifests and the love that she manifests is not a monotone, because it is an expression of his infinite potential, and therefore it is always changing in quality. A glimpse of this we have in the domain of form when we perceive something as beautiful. If you ask yourself, what is it that makes this flower beautiful, this object beautiful, this scene to be beautiful, or this face to be beautiful? What makes for the beauty itself? We have in modern efforts, in the Western traditions, efforts to define beauty through mathematics, through symmetry, but they all fail, because there is a beauty which transcends measurements and symmetricities, isn't it? There is a glow of beauty. In the Indian tradition, we find Kalidasa defining beauty in the phrasing which I will translate from the Sanskrit. From moment to moment, that which manifests newness, that is verily the true sense of beauty. Kshanai kshanai nutanam upeti tadeva rupam ramaniyataya. And the nature, the word used, ramaniyam, is not only beauty, but beauty that you find yourself drawn to, immersed in. And you see the character, you see something beautiful, you say, this is so beautiful. And it's so beautiful, and so beautiful. The form may be the same, but it's as if a newness, something different, that's glowing out. If the form is dynamic, as for example a beautiful dance, or a flowing river, then you experience the change also of beauty that manifests through varying forms. But inherently the beauty does not depend on the form, but is a qualitative expression of this newness, which is also the character of the love and the delight of the divine presence within us, and the perception of the divine presence in all things. So this creative power of the divine energy, Sri Aurobindo describes as Mahalakshmi. All turn with joy and longing to Mahalakshmi. I read from Sri Aurobindo. For she throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. To be close to her is a profound happiness, and to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. Grace and charm and tenderness flow out from her like light from the sun. And wherever she fixes her wonderful gaze or lets fall the loveliness of her smile, the soul is seized and made captive and plunged into the depths of an unfathomable bliss. Magnetic is the touch of her hands, and their occult and delicate influence refines mind and life and body. And where she presses her feet, course miraculous streams of an entrancing ananda. This power pouring out is the experience when you gaze upon the Lord. In his form of manifestation in the physical body, we have the same experience, gazing on the face of Sri Krishna. And your soul is seized and made captive and plunged into the depths of an unfathomable bliss. Not only that magnetic touch heals, it refines, it awakes, it draws out your deepest and highest and best. This literally, physically takes place in the life of the avatar when he chooses to manifest this aspect of love, as we see in the life of Sri Krishna during the period of his play in Vrindavan. In later parts of his life, you see other aspects of knowledge and strength and skill and various other forms. Of course, the love always sustaining from behind. But here was a pure manifestation of love, delight, and bliss for a few years in an intense concentration. And you have the stories of Sri Krishna and Radha and the gopis. And those stories you will find not only have a physical reality, but they have also profound symbolic truth. And I will dwell on one of these, or the symbolism of some of these. You see, in the story narration, the gopis are busy in their life. So they milk the cows, they turn the milk into curd, they churn the curd, create buttermilk and extract butter. And the butter they heat to make the ghee, the clarified butter. They're so immersed in this that they are lost to the world. Now this journey, this whole process you will see is symbolic of evolution of consciousness. The milk comes from the cow. Go in the Vedic symbolism is the spiritual light, but the derivation from the spiritual light is our mental consciousness. This is refined and processed until it becomes clear, ghritam, energy of spiritual illumination. So these are stages of translation from a physical clarity of mind, mental consciousness, all the way to a spiritual clarification of power, of tej, which infuses the higher spiritual consciousness and knowledge. Well, but they are immersed in this evolutionary process and the process of life. Sri Krishna plays the flute. Not in front of them, but hidden behind the trees, hiding in the forest. But when they hear the call of the flute, the gopis are attracted by the haunting melody. Their souls are seized, made captive, and drawn to the love and the bliss that music of the flute draws them to. And so as they are carrying the pot of milk, they turn, they forget, and the pot falls and breaks. Freed of their bindings and attachments and desires, they turn to this call. Seek out the source. As do we in our lives. When we feel the call of something greater, something more true, something more real, the call of the divine love and joy and bliss, all else suddenly becomes meaningless and we yearn for that. And they seek him and they chase after him into the forest. Vana is forest in Sanskrit, but it is also a double meaning. Vana is also delight. They're seeking the source of the delight in the forest that is delight. Hiding appearances, deceptive forms behind which the true sense of the delight hides, but also it can represent the multiplicity of the delight through which you seek the oneness of the delight. And when they seek and do not find, they give up. Each time they give up, he appears from behind the trees, renews the call, awakens, reinvigorates this quest, and hides again. And so, through a series of such revelations, he leads you all the way to the center of the forest, of Vana, of the oneness of the delight of multiplicity. On the way, there are other stories where they pause to take a bath in the river, and he comes and steals their clothes. And they have to stand before him bare. Only when they accept that he gives back the clothes. And this is our journey in life, where we cover ourselves in fake perceptions of oneself. We have our clothes of virtues and our clothes of vices. And unless we drop these clothes, we cannot stand bared before the Lord as we truly are and merge in Him. But in the beginning, the clothes we shed happily are our vices, happy to go. But our virtues, we cling to them. And Sri Aurobindo describes this in one of the sonnets. It is not until the beloved tears them by force that we realize how we had been deceiving ourselves, because the virtues are also a self-deception. And that is when we can stand as we are, truly, bared. In that can be the true oneness. And so the gopis are drawn through various stages of the yoga, of their consciousness, of their journey of life. And eventually the gopis, of course, represent the human soul. We are all drawn eventually to the center of the Vana, of the forest. And in the center of oneness, Sri Krishna reveals himself at the center. And you have the dance of the gopis whirling around him, manifesting his love, his delight, his bliss. But then what happens? He suddenly multiplies himself and is uniquely dancing with each of the gopis. Because the Lord is within us uniquely, even though we know Him in the oneness of all. And the play which is unique to each one of us is the unique journey of our lives, of our soul, which is His journey. And that's why no two journeys, no two swadharmas ever collide. They are always complementary. And yet all are needed to have the full richness of tapestry of the lines of experience and delight to be manifested. In a sense, each one of us, our sense of I is his journey through space and time of self-expression, self-discovery, and full manifestation and revelation. There is no we, there is only he. We are as if a temporary, superficial, reflected form because he is present within us. The ego sense is the false I, which must turn then to realize the true source, no more as a mirror that reflects, but merging into the source itself, that we are truly as divine soul. And so this whole story of Krishna's play in Vrindavan, of course there is a physical aspect to it, but the profound spiritual import is far more important, because the dance of the gopis in Vrindavan continues on the subtler planes, calling us to their reality, to that experience, to that promise. Vrindavan itself is the forest of Vrinda, which is the tulsi leaf. The tulsi, as you know, the symbolism of the tulsi is devotion. Well, that being said, each one of the gopis experiences Sri Krishna uniquely in a unique personality. And so when we look at the avatars, again, they are distinctly unique personalities. When we look at the vibhutis, which are also from the Divine Lord, partial manifestations, unique personalities and aspects. Each one of us, in a sense, is a unique personality and aspect of his consciousness, isn't it? When you combine thus all the personalities, we find certain groups, collectivities, and collectivities of collectivities, and then there are aspects which are as if deities presiding over these collectivities. As we climb up the full journey to the source itself, which multiplies into so many aspects, the highest station of the oneness of the divine personality, that is He. I'll dwell on this a little bit. There are many ways of experiencing the divine. The most obvious is the experience of the divine within us, in an individualized, unique aspect and form. Another is the perception of the divine as one who holds the universe and sustains and supports, but one throughout. Another is the divine outside the universe, presiding over, leading, guiding. And then there is the divine which transcends all human possibility of formulation, transcending even space and time. And yet an aspect which is beyond manifestation, unmanifest, waiting to manifest. In all these different relationships, all the way to the highest, they are as if perceptions of the divine on different levels. The highest, the most complete, which includes all of these aspects, we call that the highest personality. By definition, therefore, we name Sri Krishna. The Sri representing the completeness in the highest oneness. That includes all. The Sri is very specific. Krishna, the name itself, the root is Krish. And it's not black, by the way. This is one of those very superficial distortions. Krishna is described as black or blue skinned. No, the blue is the color of his aura, of the presence of his consciousness, bluish. The Krishna, yes, same word in Sanskrit also represents dark or evening, because it is derived from the same root. The root Krish is akarshana, attraction, the power of attraction of love. In a physical form, that which absorbs light, which attracts and absorbs, is therefore Krish or black. But here the sense is this power, the magnetic attraction by which he draws us, draws the whole creation back to himself. So there are three movements of this magnetic love. It is that which pours out in the energy of his manifestation. It is that which fills and nourishes each form and guides the journey. And it is that also which draws all back to himself. Not in withdrawing the universe, but in turning the whole universe to realize its center, that all may flow and whirl around the center. There's a very interesting phrase in the Bhagavad Gita where Sri Krishna describes how the Divine Lord seated within us drives, whirls all beings as if around a machine. I will read from that in the form of the Gita. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. That is Sri Aurobindo's translation. The Lord, O Arjuna, is seated in the heart of all beings, turning all beings mounted upon a machine by his Maya. Maya, of course, here represents the physical energies into which we are all immersed, which are mechanical. And so as if in a machine, all is whirled. That is our beginning. That is the beginning of the journey of each atom, of each planet, of each galaxy, of each individual, because we live almost animal-like in our first instincts. But as we awaken and the divine manifests, there is still the play. But the whirling play is now the dance of the gopis around Sri Krishna, the awakened consciousness, liberated in divinity. And though the same principle exists, now it is entirely awake, entirely conscious, and his free manifestation. There's the phrase that Sri Aurobindo uses. He says, somewhere where he explains, one of the greatest ecstasies possible is to feel oneself carried by the divine. In fact, this is a very interesting text because he compares this with the other extreme. He says, not by the stars or karma, for the latter is bad business, dry and uncomfortable, like being turned on a machine, yantrani, yantra rudhani mayaya. He quotes from the Bhagavad Gita. That's the inferior life, which is subconscious, mechanically driven by compulsions. But to awaken and to participate, one of the greatest ecstasies possible is to feel oneself carried by the divine. And so this brings us now to the closure of our meditation on the theme, manifesting Sri Krishna. And I want to close with reading a passage from Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, where he describes the experience of standing before the Lord and seeing him, knowing him intimately as the highest personality, as Sri Krishna, the supreme divine personality. All grace and glory and all divinity were here collected in a single form. So as you see, one in the one, all these different aspects of grace and glory and divinity in a single form. All worshipped eyes looked through his from one face. You see, all the deities we have been worshipping, they're all in that one whom you worship. And you'll find them all in the same eyes. He bore all Godheads in his grandiose limbs. It's as if the culmination, all the deities, all the powers, all the gods and Godheads merge into his limbs. An oceanic spirit dwelt within, intolerant and invincible in joy. A flood of freedom and transcendent bliss into immortal lines of beauty rose. So their forms, their lines, he has a form, but the forms of beauty are immortal. I skip a few lines. The world creates itself invincibly, for its body is the body of the Lord. All powers were woven in countless concords here. You see, in life everything is fragmented and contradictory in a discord. Here they find their merging in concord. The bliss that made the world in his body lived. Love and delight were the head of the sweet form, in the alluring meshes of their snare recaptured. The profound blissful members held all joys, outrunners of the panting heart. You see, we seek with our panting heart the joys, they outrun us. But all those joys are right there within him. Instead of chasing for him in the forms, if we go straight to the source, we find all these joys. And fugitive from life's outstripped desire, whatever vision has escaped the eye, whatever happiness comes in dream and trance, the nectar spilled by love with trembling hands, the joy the cup of nature cannot hold, had crowded to the beauty of his face, were waiting in the honey of his laugh. There is more. His lips curved eloquent like a rose of dawn. His smile that played with the wonder of the mind and stayed in the heart when it had left his mouth, glimmered with the radiance of the morning star, gemming the wide discovery of heaven. I skip again. All contraries seeking their close kinship new, rich-hearted, wonderful to each other met, in the mutual marveling of their myriad notes. As from the harp of some ecstatic god, there springs a harmony of lyric bliss, striving to leave no heavenly joy unsung. Such was the life in that embodied light. This is a glimpse of what it means to meet the Lord, Sri Krishna. But it is also a glimpse of what we experience and manifest when he awakes in us and we fully merge as his consciousness. This is the life that each one of us, or an aspect of the life that each one of us will experience. And in preparation for that, at least in our understanding, we can realize that the universe is His body in material form, as we see with material eyes, but also subtler ranges as we learn to see with subtler sight. Our lives are His journey of exploration of this delight that is the universe, which is Himself. And so every step to the soul is a delight. All in the universe manifests His knowledge, His power, His bliss, but unconsciously. And therefore we see discord, chaos, conflict. By yoga, we awaken to His presence within us consciously and manifest Him consciously. And with that, therefore, all begins to align in harmony and concord. Our soul merges into His bliss of union. Being lost in Him, we find ourselves then participating in His bliss of manifestation, of creation, of expression, innumerably, unendingly, joyous, blissful, pouring love, knowledge, strength in each form that is created, embodying something of the divine truths. Such is our journey of life in its larger goal, of which we have only experienced the first two steps. It is this third step of Vishnu that awaits us, to which we are now called, and the means given in the knowledge of the yoga. And the Lord of Yoga Himself seated within you leads the yoga, and therefore the thing you seek, the goal of the journey is inevitable because it is His journey. Holding this sense of purpose of our lives, we may spend a few minutes in concentration, in adoration, in love and self-giving to the One who is Sri Krishna.